What's going on, everybody? Poem here with Late Night Gaming, and I'm with my pal Solo. What's going on, Solo?
Oh, what's up, man? Coming back from the graveyard. What's up?
It has been a while for me on making content for sure. I've been quite busy, but I also, just kind of needed a good idea, and I think I finally have one, and that's to do these off-meta videos. So these will be similar to the masterclass videos that you guys have all seen that Loopy runs. But these can be more focused on decks that have done well in a tournament. Maybe they didn't win the tournament, but they got like in a top cut or something like that. And they're not necessarily meta staples, but they're decks that you might want to consider bringing to try to attack a meta. So again, this is sort of like a winner circle for people that are able to um, perform well with some off-meta spice. So tell us a little bit right here about your Luke ECL, Luke 4 ECL deck that you did well with recently.
Well, thanks, Paul. Luke 4 ECL is kind of like the perfect timing for the deck. As for those of you who know who have been keeping up with the meta, you know that one of the teams, Boston Network, took Vader 4 to Minneapolis and did extremely well. And, everybody I talk to locally at my play groups and stuff like that, weeklies, um, a lot of them are playing Vader Yellow. And funny enough, Luke 4 is a direct counter. And that wasn't like an intentional call to play the deck, but it just so happened that it is. And I even think FFG designed it that way where the Luke and Vader fight, you know, Vader makes ships and Luke pings them down, and it's like feels like episode five. Yeah, episode five of Star Wars. So, Luke for ECL is Red Green Heroes, and as you know, Red Green Hero, there's a more popular Red Green Hero in Sabine. And so there are similarities to the deck because ultimately the some of the best cards in Red Green Hero are going to run across a lot of the decks. But this definitely has a different focus, which is more focus in the air than any of the other Red Green counterparts because Luke 4 is a pilot.
Sweet. So what would you say? So let's go kind of take a look again at this leader. Trying to, it's gonna be a little janky, but let me just adjust this screen here. Um, I liken this first ever video that we're doing here to SpaceX crashing all those rockets, and at some point you just got to start and just work out the kinks as you go. But
Yeah, just walk me through the cards so that like
yeah,
I can know exactly what you're talking about.
so we've got we're just taking a look at the leader card itself right now. So the backside.
Okay.
So just explain his non-unit leader side and why and what he does and what how that makes him effective.
So he's a pilot leader, and his leader side states that whenever a fighter makes an attack, he can take an action to exhaust him and deal one damage to any unit. And that is really powerful because one, it is free, but there's a requirement for its freedom, which you must have a fighter. So your deck needs to lean into more fighters. So there are some considerations towards fighters when it comes to this deck. So also the strength of that ability is that it can cross any arena. So even when the fighters, as you know, are space units, when they swing and hit base or trade into other units, that leader ability that Luke has can even get onto the ground to set up a lot of the plays in this deck that make this deck unique and very powerful.
Okay, cool. So he doesn't deploy till 6. Let's go ahead and, again, this is going to be a little janky. I should have planned this a little bit better, but we've got, can you explain his leader side and how coming in at 6 isn't too much of a liability for him? Like, why is that not a problem?
Well, the good thing about this is like I would compare Luke almost to a pilot version of CAD because what he is good at is controlling the board. And there are some cards, and there are a couple of key cards that I'm pretty sure we'll get into that help assist this ability in keeping the board under control so that when the game goes long enough and the board is relatively clear enough for Luke to have a big impact. And typically, turn R6, resource turn 6, is the turning point where we hit the gas and we go blow up that Death Star.
Okay. Is he? I thought you were gonna say when you were talking about similarities. I kind of thought you were gonna say like maybe Chewbacca or something, because like he has that text on there that he can't be defeated by like enemy card abilities. Would you say there's like a kind of a corollary to Chewbacca as well? Like there's he sort of has to be you have to fight him. You can't just use an event to kill him, kind of thing, right?
Definitely, I see that. Obviously, the only thing we have to worry about as far as getting defeated as an upgrade is bamboozle, which a discussion for another day is unfair interaction, and Luke should be immune to that. But he is not. So if you are going to play this deck, make sure when you're playing against Quinlins and some other yellow heroes, maybe Han, they some of them run it main, but a lot of it's in the board. So game one, you can be greedy as you want, but game two, you have to keep in mind that Bamboozle's out there. So you may want to keep that in mind when you want to go space.
Oh,
But his leader side is really good. Obviously, the reason why he planned is to go into a ship, and he has a special ability. When he pilots a fighter, he gains an on attack ability that is allowed to do 3 damage to any unit. And like we said, one of the themes of the deck is being able to cross arenas. So this is a very strong ability, and one of the main reasons why not only does he turn the corner, but he continues to blow things up as he goes.
so it's sort of like hard to race him because he's kind of hitting base, but he then is also kind of killing the opponent's guys, sort of like a Cad Bane, similar to that.
That is correct.
Okay. Well, let's see here. I'm gonna put your deck list from the tournament back up on the screen for everybody to see. I want to
Okay.
definitely before we get into the tournament itself, I wanted to just kind of have you kind of like tell us a little bit more about the list and the deck itself. So, like just bigger picture, I feel like we've been talking about it, but maybe just if I describe it this way, what is the win condition of the deck and what is the deck trying to accomplish?
Okay, so the deck is trying to accomplish um against most decks, it's trying to control the early game. So in against aggro decks, it wants to remove the units. And also against later game decks, it wants to remove the deck setup cards, the stuff that draws them cards, the stuff that heals them, the stuff that they can use as fodder. So the deck is trying to keep the game under control so that when Luke comes out, he is able to essentially turn the corner. Some of the main win conditions of the deck are getting into your ship, which the main ship you want to target when you're piloting this deck is Red 5. Red 5 is a 3 cost red hero aggression heroism. It's statted at 3/4, and it has an on attack ability that says deal 2 damage to any damaged unit. So this combo is one of the best combinations in the deck. Um, and so when Luke hops into it, it now his stats are 4 or 5 in space, and um your green screen's moved
Yeah, no,
behind you.
that was my wife.
Okay. Okay.
We've got we've got
Um
we've got families, families behind us, but we're going
okay,
we're
okay,
we're
okay.
we're, we're going for it.
Okay.
Sneaking in an hour on a Sunday.
Yeah, yeah. So we have Luke, when he hops into the ship, he's a 4 or 5. So those are his stats. He gets 4 or 5, and he has the on attack ability when he's a fighter. And then on the ground, he's a 5, 6 base stats. That's it. But those are pretty good stats for a 6 cost leader. But anyways, you want to hop into that red 5, which gives him 2 on attack abilities, which is very relevant to another key card in the deck, hot shot maneuver. So one of the most powerful plays in this deck, and I would argue one of the most powerful effects in the game that has not been properly utilized as of till recently, is Luke hopping in the red 5, and now they have 2 on attacks, which essentially, just to sum it up, does 5 damage to any unit, or can do 3 damage to one unit and 2 damage to another across any arena. Friends, this is a very powerful effect. And once you combine that with Hot Shot Maneuver, which Hot Shot Maneuver is a 1 cost card that states choose a friendly character unit, and that unit, you check for how many on attacks it has, which in this case it's 2, and do 2 damage to different units. And so essentially, when you do this with Luke piloting Red 5, you essentially can kill a 7 health character, which is very strong. So if they try to Luke you after you maybe kill something, and they try to play their Luke while you're in the ship, they'll bring you down to a 1/2, right? They will bring, or 1/3. They will bring you down to that level, but you still can do this play and one shot their Luke. This is very, very powerful.
Nice. I'm like super trying to set up a way to be able to cycle back and forth between cards as you're talking to me.
Oh,
So,
sorry about that.
no, no, you're good. I'm just like I'm like I said, I'm like producing this show as we go here, but um, I'll get that sorted out. Why don't I put the just put the deck list back up there, and why don't you just tell us a little bit about which cards you think are core to the deck, and then which cards you think are more like flex spots, and then we
Okay.
we can I can just keep trying to do some better visuals here for the viewers. I had it's complicated, but I'm only able to show like one card at a time. So when I need to find another card, it's like not going well. But yeah, tell us about core and then flex while I get this technical stuff sorted. Go ahead.
All right. So core cards to the deck. So um I'll start with one of the most core cards in the deck, and that's Hot Shot Maneuver. Hot Shot Maneuver is what we are really building around when we build this deck to the best of our ability, obviously without making too many concessions to some units that may not be as strong. So we are playing for Hot Shot Maneuver, which, so we want on attacks. So that leads us to listing some of the core cards that that combine with that, which are the Beam unit. That is a core card in this deck. Um, Red Squadron Y Wing is another core card to the deck. Black One is another core card to the deck. Um, Red 5 is definitely a core card in the deck. Um, some other core cards in the deck are Sabine's Masterpiece. This is another on attack ability. So, sometimes you don't want to get caught up that maybe, because if you notice the deck is a lot of red, so really you only get um a lot of the time you get the one damage, but that's fine. That actually combines well with the deck, anyways. But even if you don't have any units, the fact that Sabine's Masterpiece have the on attack, you can still trigger Sabine Hot Shot Maneuver. Now, one of the key things about Hot Shot Maneuver, where throughout the tournament, a lot of people want to read the card to, to see what it does, because they're not familiar with it. But you don't even need to do the final part because the great thing about Hot Shot Maneuver is that not only does it do the two damage, you get to attack after, all for the cost of one. So this card is basically an action efficient daring raid. And so it's a very powerful card. And the great thing about it is you don't always have to be ready to do it. You can play your ship that has on attack. And if you have the extra resource, you can play hot shot maneuver and take out anything that costs that has two or less remaining health. Or you can use it to set up kills for your future turns with red 5, for example. So another core card, one doesn't have an on attack ability. It is blue leader. Blue leader is powerful. And one of the most powerful plays in this deck is another core card I will name Bounty Hunter's Quarry. You might think that Bounty Hunter's Quarry may have maybe only been a Quinlan Green staple or maybe a boss staple because he can double bounty, he can double trigger the bounty. But ultimately, I even feel like this deck is the best I've seen Bounty Hunter's Quarry in because one of the sauciest plays in the deck, and just a sneak peek to talking about the tournament. Um, One of the major plays is I put Bounty Hunter's Quarry on a red 5, playing against the Quinlan Tarkin Town in my fourth round matchup. And I then the next turn, I played Blue Leader and rammed it into his Bounty Hunter. Oh, sorry, I rammed it into his red 5. Then because that's an attack for your fighter, because Blue Leader is a fighter, I pinged, killed the red 5, that's 4 damage, with Luke's leader ability, triggering Bounty Hunter's Core, which Red 5 is a unique unit. So that's a 10 search instead of a normal 5. So I searched 10 cards in my deck and I found another blue leader. And I used that blue leader. I played it for free. And then because it got played for free, I can still use its ability and exhaust 2 resources to give it 2 experience and threw it on the ground. And I rammed it into their Quinlan that was out. So it was a phenomenal play. And that was one of the game changing definers of the match that ultimately led to me winning that second game. But just to
Seem,
give you the
yeah.
power.
It seems like a lot of you need to have fighters, 3 cost cards are just value. You have a lot of quality 3 costs in your deck. And then
Yes.
particularly if you're finding something that then has ambush, like the blue leader, you're able to get some benefit from it right away. So yeah, I can see where there's definitely some synergy there. Um,
Yes.
so before we get into the tournament, what is tell us a little bit about Solo, the player, and the play style of the player, and maybe just also a little bit about like maybe why you built this deck and what your motivations were.
Well, first and foremost, I do want to give a shout out to I gotta say his handle correctly if you see this video. Albatross. something like that. He is the actual founder architect of this current deck. And so I did maybe tweak a few cards to my flavor, mostly the sideboard, adding Poe unit and Poe pilot, sorry, and Trench Run. But ultimately that deck, that list is all him. Um, it was, most of the sideboards were his call. I just saw the list and I was like, oh my gosh, this list is actually looks good. And um, I actually, funny enough, I took Hot Shot Maneuver out the first time I played it because I didn't understand what it did. And I put in three trench runs and I was still having a great time. Hitting people for 10 and 11 damage. And then I talked to him and he was like, it's the best card in the deck. What are you doing? And I read it again and I was like, oh, my bad. What was I thinking? Put it right back in, turn the trench runs to the board, and I was off and running. And the deck, once you learn the play lines, the deck sings like I think I'll say this because I talked to my good friend Reflex. Um it will beat good and below Kira players. I have yet to test it into elite Kira players because, as you know, this game is very pilot driven. So the better pilots will give you a harder time. So always understand that when you're playing this game, everybody's pilot skill is different, like kind of like chess. So, but I'm a competitive player, and typically I'm playing tier one decks. My mainstay for most of the game since it's set one has been Sabine. I took Sabine ECL to one of the first PQ in the first PQ season for the game at Star Wars Unlimited. I took that deck to top four in that PQ, going undefeated through Swiss, only dropping about three games throughout the whole day up until the top four. So,
So yeah, the red green, ECL. I mean, you're kind of in your wheelhouse there, and then you see a player. You said his name's Albatross or something like that.
yes,
Okay, so Albatross, um, I'm hearing is possibly kind of a little bit of the mastermind here around the core concept. So definitely want to make sure that Albatross feels honored and respected for having created something of quality here that Solo was able to push forward and have success with. And you said you stuck with most of the main deck that Albatross had put together, but there was some changes in the sideboard. Would you say there was any big changes in the main deck that you can identify, or would you kind of just roll with what Albatross had put together?
man, I really just rolled what he had. I couldn't really oh, actually, you know what? I did make a change now that I remember. I took in the original version he had Spark of Hope, but he even admitted that Spark of Hope was a fringe card. There's some nice times where you set up a blue leader kill, it dies, then you resource it, and then you can hop on an early flip with Luke and then take over the game there. But through testing, and I put in a lot of testing into this before I took it, um, I I found myself resourcing it more because I thought they were just better plays than trying to pigeonhole myself into trying to set up things. And so I did make changes to the deck post the tournament that I think were necessary. We can get into after, but going into it, I kept outside of Spark of Hope, the deck was pretty core, and for the Spark of Hope. I put in Fleet Lieutenants. I ended up going with Fleet Lieutenants. And so they helped me a couple games, but it definitely needed to be a three of instead of two. So
Okay. All right. So I think we've made some progress here in understanding the deck, all that kind of stuff. I think we're going to kind of get into the tournament that you played in. So where was the tournament? How'd you do? And yeah, let's just start there.
well, I, people are gonna laugh, but I played the tournament in Central Florida in Kissimmee, which is at the famous Coliseum of Comics. Arguably one of the toughest places to play. It's been the biggest draw for tournaments. The tournament that attended this time had 90 people. So it was a relatively large event. And so that's where, I played and it was a good time.
And then, so a little bit about how you did. I know that you were 6-0, and then you I think did a was it like an intentional draw in the last round or something like that?
It,
Um,
it actually ended up being just a regular draw. I
okay.
actually did end up playing the round seven, which now I kind of regret for reasons of mental fatigue. I should have took the ID and walked away and decompressed to get ready for Top Cut, and I didn't do that. And so, I learned from that. Um,
So ranked number one go after Swiss out of 90 players. I mean, that's pretty good for an off meta deck.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right, and then you
I,
had you said top cut. You want to tell us about your top cut matches there? I don't think they went the way
sure.
you wanted. You said mental fatigue was a factor, but so what took you out there?
Man, like you don't really know what's happening when it comes to mental fatigue. You don't really know it's happening till honestly after the match, and you start retracing your steps about the matchup and the decision points you made. And my decisions weren't sharp, and like it really is weird on you because like I was in the zone all day. I was like focused, thinking about what my opponent's doing, thinking what I'm gonna do, thinking about two, three turns ahead, trying to predict where my opponent's going and how I'm gonna respond, what they're trying to do to stop me and playing around that. There's a lot of things to be thinking about when you're playing this game. And even your draws, the information changes. Even in some critical matches, like I ended up resourcing before the round started and then picking up that resource before the round started and switching that decision, which actually ended up being correct. And if I didn't make that change, I would have lost. So like I I was super focused and it's taxing. And so by the time I got to the eighth round, essentially, I my decisions were not clear, and so I did end up losing to the winner of the entire PQ, one of the Boston Network guys, David. Um, Really great players playing Quinlan Tarkentown. He was my toughest matchup both times of the day. There was a pure Data Vault player that was very tough as well. But this guy gave me everything. He dropped the first game against him in round four, and I was on my back foot. And there was a tense moment in game two where I was not sure if I was going to make it, and I turned the corner and was able to close out game two, and then I won game three. So, um, but he got his revenge in Top Cut, which where it matters. So, but shout out to him, David. You guys probably know him, and it was a great time.
So what were some of the in that particular loss? Because we want to try to shore up maybe our weaker matchups and unresolved issues. What would you say were some of the like defining moments and cards that kind of might have blown you out or situations that kind of blew you out?
Um, Man, so I will say Poe was backbreaking. This Quinlan player, he went back to Poe. I noticed a lot of Quinlan players elected for what's his name? The Plo Koon. They elect for Plo Koon over Poe. Their big drops are Plo Koon and Han, big unit Han. So Poe was backbreaking. There was two significant plays that the deck makes with Poe. Obviously they can hit you for eight with his ability, but if they have a hot shot in a row, that's 10. And if they um have a hot shot on them already and they hit you with surprise strike, that's 13. And so, if that's my math is correct, eight,
Hmm.
they're at 8,
Yeah.
11, yep, 13. So, that's 13 damage. Like that's better than a piloted trench run.
Hmm.
So that was like honestly, I think that's what Quinlan decks have been missing. They've been so paper cutty that you kind of just know it's going to be a grind, but then when you get hit for 13, you're just like, wait, the game's over. So
Yeah.
that was really tough to deal with.
Okay.
On top of what Quinlan does already, where you got to play around the pings in Tarkin Town.
But you felt like you had a lot of decks that you were good into. You mentioned at the beginning of the video, like the Vader Yellow being able to ping away his little ships he's making and such. And you said into Kira's, you're generally, you can beat somebody that's not like maybe an expert pilot, but maybe you've got some play into that. Um, so what are some of your other kind of good matchups, do you think?
Ray Data Vault, that was another matchup we were very good into. Ray Data Vault, it just it's a lot of the units are small. They don't really hit you that much. They're trying to get to the late game, and we just control their units, and they don't have anything going into Ray's flip. And Poe or Wrecker just cleaned her up, and that's really the game. The game snowballs after Ray dies. They need Ray to live. Um, Against us, I should say, and I can't say I speak for everyone else's decks, but against Luke for ECL, they need Ray to survive because the deck still is red green hero, so it is still very aggressive, still bursty, and a lot of good units that you have to deal with. So that's another one. And honestly, any big mid range for the most part. This deck is favored into PALP. It's favored into any version of PALP. It's one of my opponents was a POP Data Vault. Unfortunately, wasn't even close. Like a lot of the games, a lot of big mid range, they don't have a chance. I played a trench Data Vault. It's too much, too many good units, and then against the big mid range, they get that their setup cards are typically unique, and that makes Bounty Honey's Quarry devastating against them.
Hmm.
So you're flooding the board and you're getting powerful units, Sundari Peacekeepers, Red Five, Sabine's Masterpiece, Blue Leaders coming and landing for 5 and ambushing into you, on top of dropping a Poe and a Wrecker. It's just way too much. And then Luke, whether he's in a ship or he comes out on the ground and it's just a 5/6, it's just too much for those decks to deal with, especially with their 1 for 1. So when this deck goes off, it is very difficult to contain it. And because of not only are we controlling your board, we get the bounty hunters correct, and we're building our board off of killing you. So it's like the perfect recipe when the deck snowballs, and it's very good at that.
All right. So the last section we have here is just talking about like next steps, future, the evolution of the deck. So you were kind enough to put together a version that includes changes and such. So do you want to have that up on the screen for us now? This is your updated version. Do you want to just tell us about what the changes you made and why you made those?
Yes. So what I noticed at times was like I love the blue leader so much, but we only had 2 of them in the deck. I pushed that to a 3 of. I ended up cutting the fleet lieutenants because I learned that it's better to just have either 3 of them or none of them. Um, you want consistency, and this is where the deck leans. I went away from the more toolboxy aspect, and I went more into getting straight to the point. we want blue leaders. We had two Cassians. I probably should have changed that even before the tournament because there were some moments where I was like, I just need another Cassian to win this game, and I wouldn't see it. I need another Cassian to stabilize, and I know there's only two, so it's like, man, I don't have anything to lean on. So I just went for more redundancy with the more powerful stuff. I put a rec. I understand why there's two wreckers in the main and not three. Because a lot of times what wrecker does to the deck, it puts your leader flick at lip. It puts your leader flip in conflict because a lot of time you do want to blow up that resource to use Wrecker efficiently. And unfortunately, a lot of the times I found that my I had not deployed Luke yet. And so not having deployed Luke, I was in a bind because if this game is very action intensive. So if I waited a moment, just one action to try and get my leader out and then set up my record, a lot of time you give your opponent like you allow your opponent to put you in check situations sooner trying to set up certain things. So that's why ultimately I understand Wreckers too, but there are matchups where you absolutely need Wrecker. And so you would bring it in to those matchups. Like sometimes, even against the big mid range, things can go wrong. And so you want to have a late game or against a Quinlan at times. I think that's one of the major focal points is you need answers for their poll and pinging him and hitting him with Wrecker late game and trying to turn the corner on them is critical. So, what other change? I took out the polls because on poll pilots, just like I said, just to it was a necessary cut to kind of keep move towards more redundancy, and so I went away from the toolbox aspect. But I really did like poll pilot. So, he's on the bench right now, but he's like if there was a 63 card deck, he'd be in there. But at any point, like for instance, one of the cards that I think is more meta dependent, but is really saucy, is Smuggler's Aid. Um, it's actually overstated card. It's a one cost heal three. And also you can smuggle it, which helps you find your castings and stuff like that. So there are times where even that three resource swing, because this game is about math, and your opponent has already determined certain math in their mind to try and defeat you, which affects their play lines. And so when you hit them with a smuggler's aid, you completely change that math. And now they're kind of like you've already took a certain path and you've changed that path, and now they are scrambling for answers. So that is one of the benefits. But I didn't need it because a lot of the matches I played were against bigger mid-range decks, and so I never felt pressured enough to need it. But I'm pretty sure in a meta that's more aggressive, Smuggler's Aid would be right back in.
So you're using Smuggler's Aid, obviously, to get those surprise heals, but also because you're smuggling, you're able to find other smuggle cards and automatically put them into your resource row because
Right.
that's how the smuggle mechanic works. You are playing the card, but then you replace it with another card, so it allows you to try to find good smuggle cards faster. If I'm getting your logic correctly, that's an interesting thought process. I hadn't considered that. So last thing is sort of like, how do you see the deck evolving in the future? Um, we lost your video. Do we still hear you? You there? Hello.
Hello, hello.
Okay, you're back. Okay. So how do you see this
Okay.
deck evolving in the future? And what kind of support from the designers do you think it needs to kind of take it to the next step in power level?
I would hope that they give us a two cost fighter that's green heroic with an on attack. Um, Having Sabine's masterpiece at its peak more often than not is better because Somebody had asked me in one of the Discord chats, like, why no Phoenix Squadron A-Wing? And it's simple. It's no on attack. And you need those early on attacks to kind of help you along, and they got to be fighters. So, having a Phoenix Squadron A-Wing, like the guy who built this deck, I think he slotted them in. And I understand it. It's just there's only so many slots in the deck, right? So you got to kind of make choices that you're comfortable with ultimately. So if you want to take away the on attacks for Phoenix Squadron A-Wing, then that's what you do.
I wonder, I feel like one thing that's on my mind that I could see the viewer wondering is how set you are on like ECL versus like going big, just going to like a data vault situation. Like what is it? Is it a tempo decision? Is it like are we ECLing because there's obviously powerful, your pose and your wreckers and just trying to like tempo people and stuff like that. Like, what's your thoughts on that? Do you like just having the smaller, tighter list to find key ships and smuggle cards? Like, what's the main reasoning behind the ECL versus the data vault?
I know a lot of people are afraid of 25 health. I know the game has picked up and it's much faster, and pretty much the only deck really playing ECL has been Sabine. Um, but the justification behind ECL, and that's another reason where Smugglers Aid could just stay main because it's 9 extra health if you draw 'em, which is better than Data Vault without the redundancy. I mean, without the spreading your deck thin and missing out on combos. But that's the thing, right? You run Bounty Hunter's Quarry, so you want to see certain cards. If you expand to the 60 in Data Vault, you're gonna weed down. You're gonna make your Bounty Hunter's Quarry less effective. That means you have to run more redundant cards, and unfortunately, there's not a lot of on attack abilities on fighters. So there's another thing like build consideration where it's like, can I get on attacks and can I get fighters? It's tough. And then you don't see hot shot maneuver as much. Like there's a lot of things you need to have your deck list tight. If we could get 45 cards, that would be great, but then you're in mono red. But you need to see the combos. And the reason why ECL is big over even the 30, because I could see someone considering, well, what about Luke 30 green? Um, I will say this, and I've not tested this, but this is pure theory. But Luke, I think Luke 30 turns almost an auto win into one of the most popular decks in the game right now, Invader 4, probably into a loss. Because even though it's an auto loss for them when you play them, there's a specific line, and ECL, an early ECL is mandatory. You cannot let them get any breathing room because if you give that deck any breathing room, the match can be lost. But the deck is so good at not giving them anything. And I did a write up on this on how to even play Vader yellow. And like basically just quickly the most important play is on resource 5, you play Poe. Because you do two things when you do that. You lock their leader in space and you lock their leader on the ground. They cannot flip their leader. And how you will lose, and you will always lose through that deck is overwhelming barrage. And you have to assume they have it. Our ships are not, we don't have a lot of health in our deck. So you can get blown out by overwhelming barrage. So it's a top priority to make sure any unit that can do above 5 damage dies. And so that's another thing why ECL. I've been pointing this forever. ECL is free removal.
Mm-hmm.
You paid for it with your deck building and your health, but it's free removal when you need it. So that's why ECL.
All right, Solo. I think we're pretty much at the finish line here. Just a couple things. Obviously, I want to thank you, Solo, for taking the time to tell us about the Luke ECL deck that you were able to pilot to a top cut. And then we want to give a special shout out again to Albatross for um, masterminding this build. Um,
Yes,
and
big shout out to him.
and hopefully Albatross can is able to see this and can get in the comments and answer any questions people might have about it as well. And yeah, I think we've got some juicy here that people can try out. Definitely an interesting deck, and we like that kind of stuff here in the off meta showcase here that we're going to be pushing out is just just stuff that's a little off the wall and but still has power. So stay tuned for future videos. I know we have the Tarkin Yellow from Vika. He's given me a verbal agreement to record another off meta video, so we'll be doing that coming up in the next week or so. But and also just a quick advertisement, so to speak. If you know anybody that does like a top cut with a off meta deck, definitely have them reach out to myself, Poem at Late Night Gaming, or Loopy or one of the other teammates, Platform, McBobber, just to try to get us in touch so that I can get them on this these recordings with them. All right. Any last words there, Solo?
Um, hey man, if you're gonna play off meta, make sure you test. Do not just play an off meta deck because you think. You have to know. Make sure you know how you are favored into this matchup, into each matchup, into the meta. Don't go playing off meta, not knowing the meta. You got to put the work in, take notes, find the lines. You do have an advantage because your opponents will have to, on the fly, figure out how to beat you. But don't think that that advantage means that you're just going to go do well. You have to be prepared, know your lines, take notes, put it in a notepad or on your phone. But if you do that, because the thing with off meta is unproven, so you got to go and prove it. Because maybe you make off meta meta, and so
That's
make
the
sure you put
dream.
in the
That's
work.
that's the dream, right? All
That's the
right.
dream.
All right. So I think we'll wrap it there. And if you made it this far, you are my hero.
Yes.